You think you know 80s rock? The leather, the solos, the stadiums? That's only half the story. Behind the glam were feuds, addictions, near deaths, and moments so dark they nearly ended careers. This video? We're pulling back the curtain. Stay till the end. Some of the wildest stories haven't even been told. 1. GunsNRoses, the implosion that started on day one. If there was ever a band that looked like chaos, it was because they were. GunsNRoses didn't just flirt with disaster, they dated it, trashed its apartment, and wrote a platinum album about it. By the time Appetite for Destruction dropped in 1987, they were already famous in LA for being brilliant, volatile, and completely unhinged. Let's start with Axl Rose, the voice of a generation, and the reason sound checks took 5 hours. He was a frontman who showed up late, fought with everyone, and occasionally stormed off stage mid-set. But when he was on, no one could touch him. That voice, that stage presence, that danger. It was lightning in a leather jacket. Then you've got Slash, guitar legend with a top hat and a heroin habit that nearly killed him. Literally. He flatlined in 1992 after an overdose, got revived, went back on tour like it was nothing. Their Use Your Illusion tour, legendary, but also a total train wreck. Riots broke out when shows were canceled last minute. There were arrests, fights, lawsuits. By the mid-90s, the original lineup was basically dead. Not officially, but emotionally gone. The darkest part? They were too good to fail, but too unstable to survive. And that tension, that's what made their music explode. It wasn't polished, it was dangerous. GunsNRoses weren't just a rock band, they were a bar fight set to power chords. 2. Mötley Crüe, Death, Addiction, and One Wild Resurrection. If GunsNRoses were chaos, Mötley Crüe were hellraisers with a budget. This wasn't just a band, it was a walking, screaming, tequila-soaked dare. Formed in LA in 1981, they basically invented the blueprint for 80s rock excess. Big hair, bigger egos, and enough substances to fuel a pharmacy. But here's where it turns. In 1984, Vince Neil got behind the wheel drunk and crashed into another car, killing his friend, Hanoi Rocks drummer Razzle, and injuring 2 others. Vince served just 15 days in jail. The band, they kept going. Then there's Nikki Sixx, bassist, songwriter, and the guy who literally died in 1987. Heroin overdose, heart stopped. Paramedics brought him back with 2 shots of adrenaline straight to the chest. He woke up, went home, and shot up again. That's how deep it was. Tommy Lee had his own spiral, multiple arrests, a jail stint, and public breakdowns. And Mick Mars? He was silently battling a debilitating spinal disease while holding down the sound on stage. But here's the plot twist. They came back, cleaned up-ish, sold out arenas again, got a Netflix biopic, The Dirt, and leaned fully into the myth of who they were. It wasn't always pretty, but it was undeniably rock and roll. Mötley Crüe didn't just survive their darkest moments, they monetized them. 3. DefLeppard, tragedy, comebacks, and that one-armed drum solo. DefLeppard looked like a clean-cut British rock band with stadium dreams, but behind the perms and power ballads, pure resilience. In 1984, drummer Rick Allen was at the top of his game, young, rich, and killing it on tour. Then, on New Year's Eve, he crashed his Corvette and lost his left arm. That could have been the end. For most bands, it would have been, but not for DefLeppard, and definitely not for Rick. He worked with engineers to build a custom electronic kit, retrained himself to play with one arm and his feet, and within a year, he was back. Not just playing, slamming, go listen to Animal, or Pour Some Sugar on Me. That's Rick Allen. One arm, no excuses, full legend. And then there's Steve Clark, the band's lead guitarist. Brilliant player. Also, an alcoholic who spiraled hard through the late 80s. Rehab didn't stick. In 1991, he died from a mix of alcohol and prescription drugs at just 30 years old, but somehow the band didn't fall apart. They kept making hits, kept touring, kept carrying that weight without ever turning dark or cynical. Their music stayed massive, melodic, and made for arenas. DefLeppard's darkest moments didn't define them, but they damn sure shaped them. 4. Metallica. Tragedy on tour and the fight to stay human.
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true.
Metallica weren't glam, they weren't soft, they were heavy. Pure thrash power straight from California garages and into the global spotlight. But their rise, it's soaked in grief. In 1986, while touring Europe, the band's bus skidded off an icy Swedish road. Bassist Cliff Burton, just 24, was thrown through the window and crushed as the bus rolled. He died instantly. It shook the band to the core. Cliff wasn't just a bass player, he was the soul, a classical music nerd trapped in a metalhead's body. His death could have ended Metallica right there, but they pushed on. They hired Jason Newsted, but let's be honest, they never truly accepted him. During the recording of And Justice for All, they literally turned down the bass in the mix. You can barely hear it. That wasn't an accident.
You clearly clown. Fighting his disease.
Then came the 90s, and with success came implosion. James Hetfield battled alcoholism for decades, eventually entering rehab. Lars Ulrich picked fights with everyone, including Napster. Kirk Hammett quietly carried it all on his back with guitar solos and emotional restraint, and by the early 2000s, they were barely speaking. The Some Kind of Monster documentary is basically a 2-hour band therapy session, with tears, screaming, awkward hugs, and a therapist paid by the hour to keep Metallica from collapsing. They clawed their way back, not just to the stage, but to each other. Metallica's darkest moments weren't explosive, they were slow burns. Pain stretched over years, but the fire? Still there. 5. Bon Jovi. Burnout, betrayal, and the breakup no one talked about.
This Romeo's bleeding. You get.
On the surface, Bon Jovi were the nice guys of rock. Big smiles, big hair, big choruses you could scream with your mom in the car. But beneath the arena anthems and denim jackets, quiet fractures that nearly tore it all down.
The materialistic plastic and play. Such a savor.
In the late 80s, Bon Jovi was everywhere. Slippery when wet went nuclear. Livin' on a Prayer wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural event, but the machine they'd built, it ran hot, too hot, non-stop touring, media, studio sessions, until the band hit full-blown exhaustion. John Bon Jovi was the face, the brand, the boss, but the rest of the band started feeling more like backup than brothers, especially guitarist Richie Sambora. He was John's right-hand man, the guy behind those guitar lines, and co-writer on nearly every hit. But as John leaned harder into being a frontman/CEO, cracks started forming.
Where you get drunk out in the wine.
By the early 2000s, Richie's personal life was spiraling. Alcohol issues, rehab stints, and a high-profile divorce from Heather Locklear. Then in 2013, mid-tour, he just left. No warning, no explanation, just gone. Officially, creative differences. Unofficially, years of tension, control issues, and burnout finally boiled over. And John? He barely mentioned it. The band kept going, quietly replacing Sambora, one of the original pillars of their sound. To this day, fans still ask, will he come back? Bon Jovi's darkest moment wasn't loud. It was silent, a brotherhood quietly breaking while the spotlight stayed on. 6. Ozzy Osbourne, Bats, Blackouts, and Total Breakdown. Ozzy wasn't just the Prince of Darkness, he was chaos in eyeliner. After being fired from Black Sabbath for partying too hard, which is saying something, he went solo and turned the madness up to 11. In 1982, he bit the head off a bat on stage, thinking it was fake. Spoiler, it wasn't. He had to get rabies shots, but behind the spectacle, a man unraveling.
It wasn't Batman, it was like a bat, a real bat, yeah.
He drank so much he forgot entire tours. His marriage to Sharon was explosive. At one point, he tried to strangle her. He was arrested. She forgave him. They kept going. Then came the real heartbreak. In 1982, guitarist Randy Rhoads, Ozzy's creative soulmate, died in a plane crash while on tour. Ozzy never fully recovered.
Hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind.
Despite everything, he kept making music, became a TV star, survived decades of self-destruction. Ozzy didn't just fall off the rails, he lived off them, and somehow he's still standing. 7. Scorpions, censorship, Cold War tension, and one final blow. Scorpions weren't just German rockers with a power ballad, they were global. And in the late 80s, Wind of Change became the anthem of a world on the edge. The Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union cracked, and their song played like a prophecy.
Walking down the streets, distant memories.
But fame came with pressure. Wind of Change was so political it got investigated. Years later, rumors swirled that the CIA helped write it. Seriously, even a podcast was made about it. Then came the fade, internal drama, creative burnout. They kept releasing music, but nothing hit like before.
Follow the Moskva and down to Gorky Park.
And the darkest moment, their final tour, wasn't. They announced a farewell, then just didn't leave. Fans were confused. Critics rolled their eyes. The band couldn't let go. Scorpions didn't explode. They dissolved. Not with fire, but with questions. 8. Quiet Riot, the band that got famous too fast and fell even faster.
Feel the noise. Girls, rock your voice.
Come On, Feel the Noise hit number 5 on the Billboard charts. And just like that, Quiet Riot made metal mainstream. But behind that breakout, a band totally unprepared for the spotlight. They imploded almost immediately. Infighting, ego clashes, constant lineup changes. By their second album, things were already falling apart. Frontman Kevin DuBrow picked fights with other bands publicly. The label hated it, the fans noticed, and then silence. They faded hard. Kevin struggled with addiction for years. In 2007, he was found dead from a cocaine overdose at 52. Quiet Riot tried to continue, but the spark was gone. They were the first metal band to hit number 1, and maybe the first to show just how fast it could all slip away. 9. Judas Priest, Trials, Trauma, and a Screaming Comeback. Judas Priest brought leather, speed, and screaming vocals to heavy metal. But in 1990, they faced something no band was ready for: a trial over a teen suicide pact. The claim? That their music contained subliminal messages. It was absurd, but deadly serious. They stood in court, grieving parents in the room, forced to defend their art as not mind control. They won, but it left scars. Then came Rob Halford's exit. Burned out, closeted, exhausted. For over a decade, he was gone. But he came back and came out. And fans didn't flinch. They welcomed him harder than ever. Judas Priest didn't just survive controversy. They walked through fire and studded leather and came out louder. 10. TwistedSister, One Hit, One Lawsuit, and The Quiet End. We're Not Gonna Take It made TwistedSister legends overnight, but that kind of anthem, it's hard to follow up. They became icons of rebellion, cartoonish, theatrical, loud as hell. But internally, they were falling apart. Creative friction, commercial flops, and rising pressure from labels who didn't get what made them great in the first place. Then came the PMRC. Dee Snider stood alone in Congress, defending metal lyrics with lipstick, a perm, and facts. He crushed it, but the backlash hit anyway. Censorship debates, album bans, moral panic. They were at the center of a war they didn't ask for. By 1987, they disbanded quietly. No dramatic farewell, just burnout and silence. They gave us one of the most defiant anthems of the decade and vanished like a middle finger in the wind. The 80s gave us arena anthems, wild outfits, and guitars that screamed, but behind the hair and hits were breakdowns, tragedies, and stories way darker than anyone expected. If you made it this far, you already know. These bands didn't just shape music, they paid for it. Which one hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. And hey, if you love stories that go beyond the music, hit that subscribe button. We've got more coming. Way more.